Hi, I'm Kieran, and I want to tell you about the forgotten Resident Evil comic book from the 90s. Resident Evil, the official comic magazine, was published by Wildstorm Productions, an imprint of DC Comics founded by the legendary Jim Lee, who even provided some awesome cover art for a couple issues. It ran from March of 1998 to February of 1999, producing 5 issues. Here, I have Resident Evil Collection 1, a graphic novel compiling a group of stories from the first 4 issues. And let me tell you, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with this book. At this time, there wasn't much readily available along the lines of Resident Evil lore other than what was in the games and in their instruction manuals. So reading this comic made me feel like I was getting the inside scoop on the seedy underbelly of Umbrella and the Raccoon City incident. The artwork is excellent and does an amazing job of bringing the brutality of the games to life. This panel of Wesker getting completely skewered by the Tyrant totally rules, and it was burned into my memory as a kid.
Chris? Stop it.
Wesker, you're pitiful.
There are a ton of terrifying monsters, there's a deep sense of dread and tension in the panels, and they really didn't pull any punches on how evil the Umbrella Corporation could be. This comic delivers in almost every single way the game does. It can at times feel just as scary to read as the games were to play. Also, it isn't just a comic retelling the events of the games. It has side stories that help flesh out the game's supporting cast, as well as some with entirely new characters caught up in Umbrella's shenanigans in Raccoon City and elsewhere. Some stories even serve as mini sequels to the game that give updates on some major characters like Barry and Leon years before Capcom would. So starting from the beginning, we have Stars Files, a story about Albert Wesker being given the assignment to investigate the bizarre murders in the Arklay Mountains. Now, if you end up reading this story and it feels just a little bit familiar, that's because most of the writing is ripped from Resident Evil's instruction manual. It's pretty much just an introduction to the Stars team with different drawings. It's not the most exciting story, but I can understand that somebody might have picked up this comic and not have played the first game, so it serves a purpose, but it's the second story where things start getting interesting. Titled, Who Are These Guys?, we get the story of an Umbrella scientist penning a letter to someone about the events leading up to the bizarre murders in the Arklay Mountains and the outbreak in the Mansion Lab. The scientist took the job at Umbrella believing he'd be researching a cure for cancer, only to be tricked into helping create monstrous, bioorganic weapons. On top of all that, he's also been exposed to the T-virus and is slowly changing into a mindless zombie. And by the way, this isn't just some random scientist. This is actually a minor character mentioned in both Resident Evil 1 and 2 named John Fay. He's first mentioned in Resident Evil in a file telling you the password to unlock the jail cell holding Chris or Jill. They reference it here with some 90s comic book nudity. Radical. The file is a letter he's writing to his girlfriend, none other than Ada Wong. He's the scientist she's looking for in Resident Evil 2. You know, before ditching him completely for Leon. Either way, it's all good because Jill busts in the room and completely obliterates him with a one-handed shotgun blast to the skull. Brutal. The final story about Resident Evil 1 is Dangerous Secrets, a recap of the game set to the backdrop of Chris Redfield debriefing the surviving STARS members about the Mansion incident. One thing about this story I always thought was funny was this panel showing a newspaper article with a straight-up dead guy on the front page. Like, what the hell is wrong with the people at Raccoon City newspaper that they would publish this on the front page? This is one of my favorite stories in the book. I already mentioned the badass panel of Wesker getting killed by the Tyrant, but you also get to see the fate of the other STARS team members, and it's pretty horrific. Jan looks like a damn T-Rex in this comic. Richard, unfortunately, didn't stand a chance.
Ouch!
My favorite part of this comic is this hilarious fourth wall break where Chris talks about rescuing Jill from the jail cell, only for her to argue that it was her who rescued him. Chris just totally dismisses her too, and later, Rebecca even takes a shot at Jill over it. The story reads like an absolute love letter to the first game, not just a simple adaptation. Unfortunately for Resident Evil 2, the comic, for lack of a better term, shits the bed. There are only 2 stories, Raccoon City R.I.P. and A New Chapter of Evil, and they both feel very disjointed and rushed. The art is still good, but the stories they wrote for Resident Evil 2, The game that was pretty much the entire reason this book was published are just downright lazy at times. Raccoon City RIP somewhat follows Ada and Ben, the reporter locked inside the jail cell in Resident Evil 2, as they deal with the beginnings of the Raccoon City outbreak, but it just feels like a random assortment of events that have nothing to do with each other. At one point, Ben runs into a bar and tells the bartender that there are zombies everywhere, but the bartender doesn't believe him. Suddenly, a bunch of zombies bust through the bar. Then he just whips out a shotgun and starts blasting. "Eat this, you rotting freaks!" Like, dude, a second ago you didn't even believe in the zombies. And then Ben just ditches him. It's so ridiculous, but it actually gets worse. Ben then runs into Kendo's gun shop where we meet this other ponytail guy named George. The story now ditches Ben and George is the main character. For a single page, because he gets eaten by a zombie and explodes. Then a chubby candy bar man shows up to the explosion, eating a candy bar, and gets immediately eaten and ripped apart. And then it's just over. Leon shows up blasting guns akimbo, and that's it. The next story, A New Chapter in Evil, is the most rushed adaptation of Resident Evil 2's story possible. It's like the writers wrote the story based on a speed run of the game. And first, let me just say, I know it was probably insanely difficult to have to cram both Leon and Claire's entire stories into just 18 comic book pages. But this story is so bloated with insanely long exposition drops that just come off super unnatural.
I'm Annette Birkin. My husband is the man responsible for the creation of the T-virus, William Birkin.
What?
John's dead, by the way. He became one of those zombies. My condolences. But you'll be joining him shortly. I won't let anyone take the G-virus from me.
G-virus?
My husband's latest work. It can create the ultimate bioweapon. William was forced to inject himself with it when Umbrella tried to steal his research. I've got to find him. Every G-virus bioweapon has the ability to implant embryos in other creatures. That's why he's after my daughter, Sherry. The bodies of individuals with non-related genetic coding often reject the embryo. But since Sherry is his daughter, her body will accept the embryo. He's got to find her. It's an inherent survival instinct. But I think that's enough of story time. I know why you're here.
Bam. On top of that, the action in this story is abysmal. Not to keep repeating myself, but for comparison, look at how the other story handled the Tyrant encounter. Once again, we get that incredible art of Wesker, and then this awesome shot of Chris shooting at the Tyrant. It's only 2 panels, but it has such an impact. Just grade A comic art. But in this story, look at how they depict Mr. X. First you see his feet, barely, then the back of his head, then Claire shooting the grenade launcher, then a panel of her saying, "Geez, that thing took 5 rounds." You don't even see the actual fight, you just have to take Claire's word for it. And that's the only time we ever see Mr. X, one of the main enemies in the game. Seriously, this comic gave Fat Candy Bar Guy a better spread. He got an entire page. Mr. X barely gets 2 panels. The fights with William Birkin are handled pretty poorly also. He's barely visible in the first fight, and then again, we have Claire just telling us that she shot him. The final fight starts off decently with a great panel of Leon and G3 Birkin, but then it goes to a panel of booms, and he's dead. This happens with pretty much any scene involving action in this story. Also, no G4 fight, no mutated Mr. X, just the train ending. Again, I get they had a lot of material to fit into this, and it couldn't have been easy. I just wish they had ditched the previous story and added 8 pages to this one. Keep Candy Bar Guy though. Now we're into uncharted territory. From here on out, we have all original stories taking place in the Resident Evil world. Some of these are great, like Danger Island, where a plane carrying a bunch of liquors crashes on a Caribbean island resort and a couple has to work together to escape the island and survive. And some of these are kinda weird, like Wolf Hunt, where Jill goes undercover at a college to catch a werewolf that's killing college students. It doesn't even try to tie itself into the game somehow. No mention of Umbrella or anything. Jill just kills a werewolf, and it's over. Mutant Menagerie is one of the better stories. It's about a security guard named Patrick Brady who works at the Raccoon City Zoo. It takes place right as the outbreak begins, and soon enough, Patrick finds himself in quite the predicament. Seems all William Birkin is on a rampage, French kissing tigers and turning all the zoo's animals into G-virus infected monsters. Patrick goes on a mission to save the zoo, arming himself to the teeth and blasting everything from gorillas to gophers. Unfortunately though, even after blowing up the entire zoo and wiping out all the infected animals, our hero himself succumbs to the deadly kiss of a G-Virus gopher. Lockdown is a story about Barry Burton taking place in the weeks after the mansion incident. While seeking therapy for the mental wounds he suffered, Barry finds himself in the middle of a hospital that turns out to be a secret Umbrella lab overrun with T-Virus monsters. Here we go again! This story is very heavy on Resident Evil tropes. Barry runs around collecting keys and finding bomb parts, all while facing down a slew of familiar enemies. Of course, you could take this at face value and let it just be a badass Barry story, but the way the comic starts somewhat alludes to it being a dream. Barry is seeing a therapist because of what he experienced at the mansion, suffering from nightmares every night since. Suddenly, zombies are just everywhere, and he's back collecting keys and quest items. He even faces off against a tyrant. Each new area Barry explores in this story just feels somewhat out of place for being in a hospital, like the random post office or the garbage room. Eventually, Barry finds himself in a swanky penthouse ballroom with zombified sophisticates dancing with each other as he torches them with a flamethrower he found and then dives off the roof and lands into a strategically placed pool. It even says, one strategically placed pool. Either way, it's cool getting an update on Barry. And this would come out about a year before Capcom would give an actual in-game update on him in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. But the most wild update, in my opinion, is in Night Stalkers, where Leon, now working for the military to hunt down the remnants of Umbrella, is called into a small town to investigate after hordes of mutant bat creatures are seen killing people. Mind you, this story was published in December of 1998, 6 years before we would see Leon in Resident Evil 4. When I first played RE4, I really thought that this comic was canon. Leon is a total badass in this, and he just kicks the crap out of everything just like he does in Resident Evil 4. Like, look at this part. He throws a knife into a bat monster's mouth, kicks it out the back of his head and into another bat monster's gut. That's as badass as anything that's happened in the games. Maybe it's just coincidence, but I like to think that the developers at Capcom might have read this and got just a little bit inspired. So that's where I'm going to end this for now. There's still a ton in these comics that I didn't even touch on, and I did that on purpose, because I think anybody who's a fan of Resident Evil should really check these out. It's so cool to see how far the series has come since then. Copies on eBay can be a bit pricey, but luckily they're all available on the Internet Archive. I popped a link in the description if you want to go check them out for yourself, because they are a great time. So I just want to say thank you for watching, super stoked about Resident Evil 9, and I'll see you guys next time.
What? Don't come this way! No!
You can't kill me!